What a coincidence of me posting this on a Sunday. Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. And today we're going to be discussing my religious/spiritual unpopular opinions. Now, I do have a background with this topic because I went to several religious schools, specifically Christian schools, and I grew up around a lot of Christians and a lot of spiritual people, so I have enough experience to know the pros and cons. So going into it, first and foremost, I'm going to say that not enough people talk about how harmful religious and spiritual rhetoric can be for people with mental illness, especially people with OCD or sometimes schizophrenia. And I wish people would discuss that more. And I think it's very dismissive when religious people act like mental illness doesn't exist and that you could pray it away, because that is just blatant ignorance. Like, that's not how that works. Like how you can't pray away a broken leg. You have to go to the doctor and get checkups, get x-rays, get a cast. Like, it's just religious bypassing. And I find that very unhealthy. And a lot of mentally ill people can cling onto religion instead of getting much needed help. Because even after prayer, they're still mentally ill. No amount of you telling yourself, oh, I'm fine, is going to make you fine if there's seriously something abnormal going on within your body or your brain. And I honestly don't think people talk enough about religious bypassing, which is basically when people basically neglect an issue that needs addressing because they just chalk it up to religion or God or angels or devils or demons, instead of just addressing the issue like they should. So to really sum up that first point, I also want to add that specifically concepts like manifestation or prayer and things like that can be very harmful if, practiced unhealthily amongst OCD people. For example, people with OCD might find themselves praying for hours on end because they're trying to get it right, or else God is going to punish them, or they feel like they have to do X, Y, and Z in this specific way, or that God is going to punish them, which can be extremely distressing. Or even in the spirituality sphere, the whole concept of manifestation, even I had trouble with, even though I'm not diagnosed with OCD. I found that it was very distressing to me because I felt like everything I thought would actually happen, because, people always say, oh, thoughts become actions. But what manifestation actually means, and what I've come to realize, is that it actually means that your manifestations is basically your beliefs that fuel your actions. So if you believe that you're unworthy and you're unlovable, you're going to behave in a way that reinforces the idea that you're unworthy and unlovable, leading to negative interactions with people because they can sense your low self-esteem and your low self-worth and your down mood. And then that affects the way they treat you because they feel glum and gloomy around you. So they don't really feel incentivized. Or I wouldn't say incentivized, but they don't feel positive around you. So they're not going to treat you in a positive way. So that's what manifestation means. It doesn't literally mean that, oh, I think I'm going to be rich, so I'm just going to wake up rich. If you want to be quote unquote rich, like all these people claim to want, you have to put in effort. You have to find avenues, hopefully legal ones, and have your beliefs guide your actions. And I learned in my own experience that negative beliefs create negative experiences, which reinforce the negative beliefs. And I think that's the true meaning of manifestation, and a lot of people get it wrong. And let me not fail to mention people with schizophrenia, because people with schizophrenia or delusion type disorders can often find themselves believing that they're a messiah, that they're a chosen one, that they're a prophet. And I think all this lingo is just feeding off of the natural human instinctive need to feel special. I don't believe that there's a chosen people. I feel like that's inherently racist concept. I don't believe that there's chosen individuals sent to spread the word of whomever. I just think that's all la la land talk, and it's not actually real. People just say that to feel special, and maybe it serves a purpose. Some people like to feel motivated by that concept, but it's not actually real. There's no proof of that stuff. And like I said, a lot of schizophrenic people that have religious type delusions will believe that either God is talking to them directly or that they're an instrument of God. And I mean, in a way, I'm not atheist, so I do believe in a higher power, and I believe that our intuition is the higher power guiding us. But I think it's another thing to believe that you are selected out of over 9 billion people to be a messiah or something. That is plain delusion. Now, for my first mental side of this unpopular opinions video, because it is split from spiritual, religious, and mental, I'm going to say that too much self-help does more harm than good. And I'm really gonna fly through these because I have a lot to say, and I'm probably gonna have to break up this video into several parts, but I do not want these videos to exceed 20 minutes. I really get annoyed by super long videos sometimes, and I wouldn't want to make those kind of videos. So yeah, I'm just gonna say that too much self-help does more harm than good, because it comes to a point where it is either procrastination or it's you actually shaming yourself repeatedly and convincing yourself that that you're helping yourself. Because I had this problem for years. I was giving into self-help, and it came to a point where I was just using self-help to procrastinate for like 3 years. I noticed that when I started my self-help journey during the pandemic, because I realized something was wrong but I didn't know what, I began consuming a huge amount of self-help content, and it actually worsened my procrastination, worsened my feelings about myself. And it came to a point where I was just watching these videos and subconsciously using it to shame myself, I guess trying to shame myself into being better. But if you're just watching self-help content with no action, you're just punishing yourself, because you're just reminding yourself of how dysfunctional you are, and that does not help. So I would advise, if you're going to consume self-help content, that you take what you can learn from it and immediately start to implement it, as to not fall into a cycle of repeated self-shame and reminder of your perceived dysfunction about yourself. Now, for my third opinion, branching off of the one I just told, my second opinion, I'm going to say that a lot of self-help content on the market is actually manipulative. And I didn't realize this until I discovered this YouTuber. I forgot her name, but I'll probably plug her right here. A lot of self-help is designed to keep you coming back for more, designed to keep you coming back for guidance. But I will say, if I could recommend any self-help content, it would actually be Jungian psychiatry or psychology, like based on Carl Jung. I feel like his is the most authentic and accurate and objective. But a lot of these YouTubers and authors, they want you to keep watching their videos, and a lot of times they're really sharing their opinion. It's not fact, and their opinions are coming from a place, from their perspective, from their angle. Like, some people might watch gurus that tell them to, you know, like, it's marketed as self-help, but it's really just manipulation tactics, especially regarding dating and friends. Like, that's not self-help. You're coming from a place of ego where you're participating in unhealthy behavior just because it's instant gratification and it feeds your ego. Like telling people to play games and wait a certain time and be alpha and be stoic. Like, why are you trying so hard to be stoic? I feel like that's a weak man's game. A strong person is able to address their emotions and understand it and feel the emotion. I feel like stoicism is just a new wave of, you know, I guess toxic positivity. And that's another thing. Toxic positivity falls under self-help, convincing yourself that it's not that bad. Stoicism is coming to a point where it's aggravating me, and I see tweets and stuff saying how, oh, you should be alpha, you should be stoic. Why are these people so against you being human? It's completely normal to feel emotion. That doesn't make you weak. Feeling negative emotions doesn't make you dysfunctional, that you're supposed to. And negative emotions are objectively designed to let you know that something is important and something needs to change. Like, if you have anxiety, if you have depression, those are all a sign that either something is bothering you or that you need to change something. So any of the self-help content that is telling you to ignore your intuition, to ignore yourself and play these games, and to shame yourself and to convince yourself that natural things, especially in a social environment, is wrong with you, because it's not. Like, if you go out and talk to people, you realize that, one, they're not caught up on these things. They're not overanalyzing you the way you're overanalyzing yourself. Two, people are more concerned with authenticity. And when people feel like you're being inauthentic, that's what makes people corny. That's what makes people lame. That's what makes people lose respect for you, when they feel like your heart is not in it, like you're posing. So I feel like you got to tread lightly when you're consuming self-help content, because a lot of these people are just trying to sell you a dream, or they're trying to sell you an egotistical fantasy that will not help you in the long run or garner you healthy relationships with other people. So for my next opinion, still on the topic of self-help and trauma recovery, I will say that a lot of times becoming aware of your trauma can actually make you feel more dysfunctional. Like, I remember before my quote-unquote self-help journey, when I would talk to people or interact with people, I would feel a little off about it, whether because of myself, what I did, or because of what they did. But I wouldn't read too much into it, and then I would just go on about my life and just see if I can improve from that based on my initial thoughts of the interaction. But after self-help content, I feel like I had a greater propensity to feel bad and just nitpick everything in social interactions and try to figure out if people are manipulative or abusive, and really just reading into everything I do and what other people do. And it's like, it reminds me of this quote Werner Herzog said, something along the lines of, either therapy or like psychiatry is unnecessary and one of the worst things that happen in the modern era, because it is akin to turning on all the lights in a home, therefore making it uninhabitable. And that's kind of how I feel. Like, too much self-help content, too much of the trauma, you know, research can end up making you feel like it's just too much going on, and you're now hyper aware of everything and overthinking everything and trying to wonder the outcome of everything, and it's just overwhelming and unnecessary, and it takes away from your ability to stay present and actually stay in tune and in sync with your actual intuition and what your body's actually telling you. Because, you know, telling yourself that, oh, this person's this person's that, and interacting with them is actually more draining than you just being naive and just knowing that they made you feel bad. Because now you're telling yourself, not only do I feel bad, but I feel bad because they're doing this to me. And I think it puts me personally in more of a position to feel more victimized. So I really took a step back from all this trauma recovery content and self-help stuff because it just became overwhelming. And I also saw Reddit threads about people saying the same thing, that they felt they could function before, but after they went to therapy and started becoming aware of their traumas, that they found it harder to be functional. And I don't know if it's because of what you're telling yourself, because you're convincing yourself or repeatedly affirming the idea that there's something wrong with you, so now you almost have like an excuse, or if it's just like breaking away everything so you could rebuild. And I think that's one of the arguments amongst older generations, that, oh, this generation or younger generations always have an excuse and always have a mental disorder. I feel like it comes to a point where sometimes, yes, telling yourself that you have this and you have that actually makes you feel worse and makes you more likely to behave in a dysfunctional way because you keep telling yourself that to a point. And one time I saw a tweet where they're probably joking, but they said that they basically stopped being mentally ill by literally telling themselves that they're not and convincing themselves that they're not. And I've been kind of doing that lately. I wouldn't say gaslighting myself, but reconditioning my self-beliefs. And it has been working because now I don't feel as much of as a creature. I can function like I used to, authentically. Now, for my next opinion, I'm going to start off by saying that when I refer to religion, I'm typically referring to Christianity and maybe a little bit of Catholicism, because that's the ones that I have experience with. I don't really know much about Islam or Buddhism, so I can't really speak on those. I don't know them in depth like that, but I have a lot of experience with Christians and Catholics, so I can say that. So I'm going to say that religion does not encourage independent thought, but spirituality kind of does. And I say that because religion is set up in a way where you basically just listen to whatever the good book or your pastor tells you to, and you're not encouraged to ask questions. I remember I was in Christian school, and partially because of my dad, because my dad would talk to me about this and make me watch videos and speeches about this kind of stuff. I would question the religious text. Like, I would question the things we were learning in church. I would question the things we learned in class because we were mandated to go to church because it was a Christian school. So I would keep questioning the teacher and ask him. And then one time he pulled me out of class to ask me if I believe in Jesus Christ, almost like trying to bend me into shape. But it's like, are we not allowed to ask questions? And I feel like any group or environment where you're not allowed to question anything is very unhealthy and can grow into something abusive and toxic, because it's even healthy to question your parents. Why should you listen to everything someone tells you just because they said so? Like, who are they? I feel like it's very unhealthy, and it does not create a place where people are critically thinking, because a lot of it in the Bible, it's not probable, it's not logical, it doesn't make sense. And I understand a higher power, quote unquote, defies logic and doesn't rely on logic. It works in its own mysterious ways. Yeah, that's one thing. But to tell me that a man split the ocean into two, that makes no sense. No way that actually happened. There's no proof that did not happen. That is fiction. And the fact that if you question that, people try to shame you or shut you up, I find that very concerning, because that's a very unhealthy dynamic. Any environment where you cannot question things is unhealthy, because then that comes into a programming type of state, you know? Like, that's basically just programming, because you're just receiving whatever they tell you. Now, I say spirituality does, because spirituality, or at least the Western spirituality or modern spirituality, it kind of asks for you to reflect and look into yourself and ask yourself questions that religion doesn't really. Religion just says, this is your problem and this is what to do, no questions asked. But spirituality is more like, if you're encountering these experiences, why is that? What part are you playing? So take that how you will. So I think this might be my last opinion for this video, because this video is getting quite lengthy, taking longer than I thought. But for my next opinion, I'm going to say that, as I said before, I think Jungianism should replace religion, or centralized religion or dogma, because I feel like religion shames people for their nature and makes them feel guilty for feeling human emotion and having human feelings, and tries to hold them to a standard of perfection, which is impossible. And I understand with the whole Jesus thing, he's supposed to be like a model for how we're supposed to behave, but that's just unnatural. And I feel like that's why you see stuff like pastors or religious people engaging in a lot of deviant behavior behind the curtains, because like, when you shame people, like, because Carl Jung says, whatever you suppress grows against you. And I feel like that is a very healthy and honest perspective, because think about it, people who always try to conceal their anger and, you know, suppress their anger, they end up blowing up and becoming the most angry when they least desire it or when they least expect it. So I feel like Jungianism more promotes wholeness and fullness as a person, as a human being with an identity, rather than religion that's trying to tell you, oh, you must be this perfect thing and denounce everything that's not perfection. That is very unhealthy. So I just prefer Jungianism, and I feel like it's a more healthy and less shameful and more honest approach to human behavior and the human psyche and how you feel about yourself. So I'm just going to stop here. These are the opinions that I have so far. I'm going to hopefully continue this in another video. But if you disagree with me, that's fine. We're two different people. You're not obligated to feel the same way I do. And if you feel like you want to share your perspective, feel free to do so in the comments. But just know that if you're being disrespectful, I am not obligated to respect you. So, not to instigate, just letting you guys know, or letting you know. So, thanks for watching. Hope you catch my next video.